Welcome to a very special bonus episode of Culture Leaders. 10 days ago, Johnny C. Taylor, the CEO of SHRM, announced that SHRM is moving away from DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and towards I&D, inclusion and diversity, effectively taking the equity out of the equation. And this has been met with a bit of controversy. I have many trusted peers and colleagues who adamantly disagree with this decision. They feel like it is a giant step backwards. They're disappointed in Johnny and they want him to take it back. I have other people, I myself included, thought that this was a strategic move about driving results and doing it in an effective way that brings more people along for the ride. Now, I don't presume to know that I'm right. And frankly, Johnny doesn't necessarily presume to know that he's right either. I want you to listen to this conversation all the way to the end because it is raw, it is honest, and it frankly almost didn't happen. This interview took place the weekend of the CrowdStrike meltdown. I was going to fly out to DC to sit down with Johnny in person, and my flight was canceled. I was scrambling. Nothing was going to keep me away from the East Coast for this. I literally started driving to SFO a few hours away from where I live because I thought there would be more chances of getting on any flight to the East Coast. I did find a flight to New York and landed in New York at 2:00 in the morning. I rented a car and drove 4 hours to DC, got there in the morning, got ready, and did this interview, incredibly sleep deprived. But it's an important conversation. And it was worth it because this is going to move the needle forward in civil discourse on this complex topic. So I invite you to listen all the way through. This is an important conversation. And I am so grateful to Johnny for being forthcoming. And I hope that you enjoy. This is what Culture Leaders is all about. Johnny.
That's my name.
I am feeling so privileged that you're here and chatting with us, and I can't wait to dig in. So the first question I want to ask.
All righty.
What is your why?
Wow, that's there are a whole bunch of whys in my life, right? But I guess if the primary why for me is, and it still may sound a little hokey, but it's impact. And specifically the type of impact is I want people to live their best lives. That's really it. Like trying to figure out how to help people figure out their why, and then essentially remove barriers, enable, uplift, do whatever we need to do to ensure that people live their best lives. And what you believe to be your best life is not for me to decide nor judge. It just is, right? So that really at my core is, so how do you figure out your why? And then how can we help you realize that why? Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. And what is SHRM's why? How does that fit in with the purpose of the organization that you now lead? So
it's funny that you mentioned that. When I joined SHRM in late December of 2017, but in earnest in January of 2018, we asked ourselves that question. So we had a mission, we had a vision statement, the stuff that everyone does. And sitting down with my executive team, we started to probe what do we do? And they started wordsmithing missions and visions. And that is a painful process, right?
It's so painful.
It is just like, never say, right? You can noodle this forever.
Yeah.
And then I asked a question to the team. I said, why do we exist? What's our purpose? Forget the long words and fancy words. Let's just come up with it. And we said very simply, to elevate HR. That is absolutely the purpose of SHRM. But I need to break that down a little bit for you because it's not only the HR profession, obviously we're SHRM, the world's largest HR profession planet, right? But also elevating HR professionals' practice, like becoming better at what we do, the way doctors and lawyers and everyone does, right? Is elevating our practice. But the third way that I think about elevating HR is in business, elevating people. Actually making business people understand the importance of human capital, that we have human capital and we have financial capital. And when you mix the two, you unleash amazing powers. So when we say elevate HR, SHRM's purpose is that simple: elevating the HR professional so that they practice great HR, elevating the HR profession so that the best and brightest people want to be a part of this profession, and then elevating people in business so that businesses truly understand the value of their talent.
I love that. And I think that that is true for a lot of the people that listen and who follow the work that Culture Leaders does, is they care about the intersection of people and profit and where those two things both thrive.
I like that.
Right? Because the narrative out there is that it's people or profit.
Right.
You have to pick. And if you pick people, you're going to suffer on profits. And if you pick profits, you're going to suffer on people. Right. That's a false narrative.
Absolutely.
We have to be comfortable in the gray area where the two meet. And I see that as my role. And it sounds like you see that as your role.
Absolutely. In fact, in a knowledge-based economy, it's the only way it works, right? Because as great as machines are, at the end of the day, human beings, the creativity, the innovation, that passion for making a difference comes from human beings. Yeah. Machines enable it. Technology enables it. But human beings are the source of and the beneficiary of what you're describing as people and profit make us all happy. Again, you asked me at the beginning of this talk, like, why do I do it? I just want you to really figure out what your why is and then to make it happen.
So are you a CEO or are you an HR guru?
That's a great question. Let me see. So I've never been a guru much of anything. So I think I'm a CEO who has let me be clear. I know I'm a CEO. My primary job and focus is to ensure that this business delivers on its purpose. And that requires that we make money so that we can hire people and give people opportunities and ultimately make the world of work for all. So that's what I do. And that's a CEO job. I have a CHRO, and each of my executive team members are essentially mini CHROs because, as we know, people work for their managers. They don't really work for a company. A company is a concept. It's a construct, but they work for their managers. So all of us are junior CHROs. I'm not a CHRO guru or an HR guru. I'm a CEO.
But you're also asked to speak on and thought lead in the HR space, right?
Yes.
And so I think that offers you a unique perspective, perhaps, on where the CEO and the CHRO come together and where they don't. How has that helped you navigate conversations that you have with CHROs and CEOs in the broader business world? So
I'm fortunate. I've been a CEO now for 16 years. I started when I was 12, by the way. But so I've literally led organizations as a CEO for 16 years. I'm blessed. Prior to that, though, I was a CHRO. Publicly traded companies, large divisions of publicly traded companies at Paramount, Blockbuster, and then I became a Fortune 500 CHRO at a company called IEC, headquartered in New York, Home Shopping Network, Lending Tree, Match.com. Those were Ticketmaster. Those were our operating divisions. My point is, I have a unique vantage point. I know what the CHRO job is. Didn't do it long enough to be a guru at it, but I truly understand what that job is. I've also, for actually now more time than I was a CHRO, I've been a CEO. So I actually understand that as well. And it's a unique position to be in where you actually have walked in both shoes. You haven't just talked about what a CHRO does and what the HR profession does. You've lived it. And similarly, you don't just talk about it from the CHRO standpoint, what the CEO wants, because I live it every day. I'm that guy. I sit in the seat where I'm like, I actually need my HR professional. I need the people, broadly calling HR, I need that to work right for us to achieve our business goals.
It's very rare for the CHRO to move into the CEO role, more rare than the CFO and the COO. And I mean,
absolutely.
Why did you make that transition, or how did you make that transition?
Luck.
Okay.
Luck, fate, God, probably some combination of it all.
Yeah.
To be totally transparent, I was a lawyer. Right? So people forget, like, I wasn't even an HR person first. I was a lawyer professionally first, and was dragged into the HR profession by business people who said, I really like the way you think. You're not just waiting for the next hourly assignment to be paid. You're actually trying to prevent problems. More importantly, you're trying to help us grow our business. So I was very fortunate early in my career for another CEO, well-known billionaire CEO, to say, let's pull you out of the legal department and let's start you on a career of HR. And that was an amazing, scary moment for me because I remember I tell this story, my grandmother, who's now no longer with us, but I told her I was going to leave my job as the deputy general counsel of a company to go be the head of HR. She had a meltdown. She thought that was the dumbest thing she'd ever heard in her life. Why would you leave a real profession to go be in personnel? That was literally the words that she used because, of course, that was her construct of it. Wasn't even HR back in the day. It was personnel. So fast forward, someone saw that I actually understood even then the connection between people and profit. And I was asked to join the HR function. I did so. And then ultimately, having mastered sort of the business side and the people side, they gave me the opportunity, for which I'm forever blessed and honored to have been given the opportunity to lead an organization and a profession. So it's not just my business that I run every day. What's unique about being the CEO of a nonprofit trade association is you're sort of leading for the entire profession, not just the four walls of your business. So I have a business to run, and then I've got to ensure that all of business values broadly HR.
And so I think that's a great transition to what's happening now. You made the announcement.
Yes.
That SHRM is moving from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to inclusion and diversity.
Yes.
So how did that go? Let's start there.
Let me tell you. So let's just say 10 days of hell, right?
Yeah, it was 10 days ago.
10 days or so ago. And I am invigorated by it. And I really am. Now, partly is I'm just that person who likes challenges. But what I realized in our research, and I know you've talked to Dr. Alonzo and our chief knowledge officer and our head of HR and others, the data, and we talk about this a lot in HR, like listen to the data, listen to insights, look at the market research. It told us very clearly that the E was creating a lot of division, divisiveness, disagreement, incivility, because partially people didn't have a common agreement about what the E was. Like, how do you even define the E?
Yeah.
Some people believe it means equal outcomes. Others said equal opportunity. Some say it's the E is about people who've historically been underrepresented in opportunities and jobs, et cetera. And others say, no, the E is equality. It's for everyone and it's contextual. So there was just a lot of confusion to start with. Secondly, it was the source of division. I'm a unifier. SHRM's job, we're not going to have everyone agree on anything, but we can't have us all disagreeing and fighting. So our effort to say, let's agree on what we can agree on. And that was the struggle. If the E was dividing us, but there was general agreement around the I being the inclusion, the D being the diversity, then let's focus on what we agree on. And we can get the other elements of civility and, accessibility and all of that, belonging, you can get all of that, including equity. But let's focus on where we know we have some common agreement and common definition. So if that was the purpose of it, it's been rough.
Yeah.
I'd be less than honest now. But anything really worth solving is going to be rough. If this were easy, someone else would have solved for this. Like I'm old enough now to be able to talk about it. We went from diversity initially to diversity and inclusion. Then we went to diversity, inclusion, and equity. Then we added an A for accessibility. Then recently they've added the B for belonging. We've been trying to figure this out. Business and HR practitioners and people who are DE&I practitioners have been trying to solve this for 30 years. Yet the data would suggest to you that arguably the results are mixed. They're mixed at best. So here's the deal. Like any other business situation or business imperative, and you talked about, am I a CEO or am I a CHRO first? I'm a CEO. CEOs oftentimes decide this is a problem we're trying to solve for. We invest in it, and we have a period of time during which we determine, does the market respond to it? And if the market doesn't, by definition, you adjust the product or the service, or you get out of the business.
Yeah.
We at SHRM were at a really interesting point. 30 or so years into this work, we had two choices. Get out of the DE&I, I&D, D space, just get out of it altogether because it's a vexing issue that we can't sort. Throw in the towel, or say, let's reset, let's revisit, rethink our approach, and let's figure out how we can make meaningful progress. That's what we chose. The fork in the road, we decided to go the path of not abandoning inclusion and diversity. It's really important work, but focusing on those things that we think will help move this conversation further. We're a country that is as diverse as we've ever been, yet we're as divided as we've ever been. So at once. And so for all of us who naively believed 30 years ago that if we just got the D right, the diversity, and it would be solved, we ended up with a far more diverse workforce than we've ever had, yet we have division.
Yeah.
So that didn't quite work. So we said, we've got it. Not only do you need the diversity, but then you need each of these people to be included and to feel included, to be seen, heard, valued. And that's why we said, let's lead with inclusion. And you don't need inclusion if you don't have a diverse workforce, because kind of everybody's the same and everyone feels included naturally. Our goal is to have a diverse workforce along with everyone realizing that they matter. And that's what inclusion is about.
So what do you say to the people who feel that SHRM has abandoned equity and doesn't care about people, and that you've sold out to big corps?
Right. So the first thing we say is explicit in our announcement. We said we have a steadfast commitment, continuing commitment to equity. And, I tried to describe this to someone, and the story kind of worked. And so maybe this analogy, metaphor, whatever you call it, worked. I said, let's say I like apple pie. I'm an apple pie, and I'm a sugar guy. Like I like sweet. So there you go. You asked me to describe it. I say, I want a piece of apple pie. I don't say I need flour, salt, sugar, apples, cinnamon. All of those things aren't described. They're ingredients to a great apple pie, but I don't have to call out every one of the ingredients. Let's just call it what it is, apple pie. Everyone gets it. There's a common sort of understanding. And then the ingredients don't go away. Equity doesn't go away. Belonging didn't go away. Accessibility didn't go away. It's just that we're going to call this what it's mostly about, which is inclusion and diversity. We're not abandoning anything, and we're clearly not doing it on behalf of big corporate, because big corporate is struggling with this and wants us to find a solution to it. Actually, in some ways, this is a weird kind of thing. Big corporate has said, Johnny, SHRM, Jim, Alex, we've been at this for 30 years plus, put a lot of money into it, time and treasure, and it's still not giving us the results. We have data, as you no doubt know, that says 69% or so of employees, not big corporate, employees say the diversity results are mixed at best. So if 70% of the people tell you that your results are mixed at best and you keep doing the same thing, how can you expect a different result? That's like the definition of lunacy. So this is not in response to big corporate. It's not in response to some politically motivated groups. It's not in response to anything but the data and the insights that we're getting from our employee population. Generally, they're saying, make it better.
Yeah. So there's, obviously news that has happened in the last 2 years where you see DEI is dying a slow and sometimes quick death.
Yes.
People have now been very comfortable announcing that they're abandoning DEI initiatives.
Yes.
John Deere, Tractor Supply. I don't know that Microsoft made
CNN,
an official.
Whatever. Go down the list, right?
But everyone is saying, never mind, that's not driving results, we're giving up. And I see that as problematic to driving results in that area. Now, the reason I think that's happening is because when DEI is an initiative or a project, it's a short-lived thing that goes away as soon as it's socially acceptable to go away. It has to be lived and breathed in your culture.
Culture.
Exactly.
You got it. That's right. That's right.
So we agree on that. And I think we at Culture Partners believe that culture is how people think and act. So how do you get people to think and act around these concepts of inclusion and diversity? How do I actually make that activated in my organization?
So what's funny is the first thing you have to do is, and I know some might not want to hear this, but if we're trying to get positive thinking and action toward this topic, and we know that the E doesn't yield positivity universally, then the first thing you do is talk about those things that will get and motivate the masses to rally around something. And so that's number one. And so this is more than just language, but words do matter.
Yes.
Right. And that's something we've had to say to people. Words matter. If your name is Jane and I call you Jill, no matter what I say after Jill, you're not listening to.
Right.
Because it's off-putting.
Yeah.
So if the words matter, which I think, and we at SHRM believe words matter, then let's focus on the words where we have common agreement and general, commitment to.
But what's interesting is I think that's what your detractors are saying too, that words matter.
Yes.
And you're giving up on a word that is deeply important, deeply in their hearts.
Yes.
And
if we were giving up on it, but those detractors.
But words matter. You took E out.
No, what we said was leading with IND. That's really funny, right? It'd be a different thing. And we had the opportunity. As you pointed out, several corporations have walked away from it, period.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And in fact, certain groups have given us not so nice feedback that they didn't think we should just eliminate the E. They thought we should get out of the business altogether.
Yeah.
And that takes a certain amount of, frankly, resolve, which our board of directors, our senior team, our employees, our profession has said, no, this work matters. So we're not getting out of the business, but we're also not going to keep doing the same thing that we've done for 30 years and expect things to be better.
Yeah. And I'm curious if you can give us some insight into what's happening in behind closed doors in the rooms of power. You're meeting with CEOs that we all read about in the news.
That's right.
What are the real conversations?
The real conversation with every CEO I've spoken with, and I have great fortune to meet with the Fortune 100. So we're not, but from Fortune 100 all the way down, they say, we're committed to this work, but we're really frustrated. Because like anything else, we've given you the resources, we've given you time, and it still seems not to be yielding the results that we want.
Yeah.
Somehow, HR, this ain't working, and we want you to fix it. So behind closed doors, there's not this big movement to eliminate this.
No one's paying you to remove the E from DEI?
Not at all. They couldn't pay me enough to deal with this hassle, by the way. I mean, because it's been really aggressive.
Yeah.
What they're saying is we actually are committed to this. We understand that we are a diverse society that will be increasingly more diverse over time. We understand that therefore, if you have a diverse workforce, people have to feel included. So this benefits us. There's no benefit to us at all by saying we're only going to be one kind of person. In fact, I was talking with the CEO of a big company now, and I won't call him out, but he said, I actually understand finally. And he said, I wasn't on this bandwagon a long time ago, that having diverse experiences, people with different backgrounds, et cetera, in a room makes better decisions. Sometimes we make a better decision. More importantly, sometimes we decide not to do something because that voice in the room that historically had not been in the room could have helped us avoid a mistake. Like, don't waste money on this product because the market's not going to respond, et cetera. So they actually understand their commitment to diversity, in short, is deeper than a moral one. I think there are a lot of them who actually feel that morally this is important, but they also say it's actually smart business. Like, this is going to make us better as a business. So I've not had to sell diversity to anyone in a long time. And that is encouraging. It really is encouraging that business is committed to this. There is, however, just being totally transparent, when you get into the details of like the whole conversation around equity, the conversation even around accessibility, the conversation around belonging. And so I want to talk, if I could just spend a few seconds telling you about that. So as we know, it's gone DEIAB, or at least that's where we kind of stand right now, generally speaking. So you talk to them and they say, yep, diversity makes sense. Got it. For all of the reasons that you described, we make better decisions when we have different types of people around the room helping weigh in on the decision. Better product, better services. Inclusion, got it. If you're going to have diversity, then the people better feel included, or otherwise there's no point in having a whole bunch of diversity. They say the A, not sure. I think the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and all those things, they cover accessibility. We make sure that people that it's not impossible for people who are differently able to do their job. So, okay, fine, whatever. You can't argue with it, but I don't quite see the need for it. Then you get to the B, the belonging. Many of those CEOs, since you asked, would say to you, feels a little syrupy, feels a little kumbaya. Like, I don't know if it's my job to make an employee feel like they belong. I don't want to exclude them. So thus inclusion is important, but whatever, fine. Feels good. It's HR talk, whatever. That's literally what they say to me.
It's HR talk.
Right.
It's those Gen Zers.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. You get that, right? But when you say the E, that's where everything breaks down.
Yeah.
Because people are either pro-E or anti-E. And what we find is 70% or so are anti-E.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I'm not anti-E, the concept of equity. We understand that equity undergirds this all. We're just not sure if at the end of the day, the focus on it doesn't distract us from achieving the I and the D explicitly. So it's a nuanced point. We're committed to it, but can you do it in the context of an inclusive workplace, as opposed to calling it out, since it's such a tough term? Some people are going to immediately shut down just at the mentioning of it.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and if you're genuinely committed to this work, Johnny, SHRM, HR practitioners, are you willing to sort of die on the sword for the E when we're saying we're going to get the E, but we're going to focus on the I and the D, where there's agreement? I got to tell you a funny story. Shortly after this was announced, I remember that day well, I got a call from a member, and it was an email. And I call members who write me, as long as it's respectful, we'll get back to civility later.
Yeah.
But if it's like, listen, I'm concerned. So I said, okay, let's talk about it. Called her, and I said, I jumped into my speech. Let me just tell you about the E. She said, I don't care anything about the E. I'm calling you because I don't understand why you dropped the A. I was shocked.
Wow.
I was so shocked. I literally was like, what? Okay, you threw me a curveball. She was from the disability community.
Yeah.
And she felt that we have just finally gotten made progress on conversations like neurodiversity, being a different dimension of diversity, not just race, gender, national origin, the civil rights categories. But she says, and here we go. We fought to get the A in here, and then you dropped the A. So I spent the conversation not talking about the absence of the E, but the absence of the A. And it became clear to me that every one of these people, and any one of your listening audience or people who are looking in, everyone feels passionate about one of those letters. And by not highlighting the A, by not highlighting the B, we're not saying it doesn't matter. What we're saying is, let's get where we have common agreement, and we are going to ensure that the workplaces are accessible. We're going to ensure that people feel like they belong, and we're going to make sure that people are treated equitably. But we've got to focus on the I and the D
To get there. So it's not going backwards.
No. Yeah, it's one of those things. And maybe, listen, I get it. If you're really passionate about something, I get it. But I would ask that people would stand back and say, what are they trying to achieve? Assume good intent. And that's really the message here, is assume good intent. There's nothing in this for SHRM but heartbreak and heartache by tackling this issue. The easiest thing would be just to let people talk about it. And I do want to share this with you. We could say, yeah, we're seeing it die. Some famous CEO, as you know, made that statement, DEI must DIE. We saw that statement. Now, I think this person is an absolute outlier, but this is the sort of conversation that's beginning to happen. And the best sort of analog to this would be what we saw with ESG.
Yeah.
For anyone who thinks DE&I, you persist, you continue to argue and fight over it, that you're going to win this battle, let me just tell you, there's a perfect example. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, everyone was talking about ESG. It was being led by a corporate executive, a billionaire, Larry Fink. He has BlackRock, and the company owns the whole world. And he said, ESG matters. And that term became so divisive that Larry Fink, billionaire guy, said, I'm not going to use it anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm still committed to our environment. I'm still committed to sustainability. I'm still committed to good governance. But if that term makes us unable to move this work forward, I am willing to step away from it. That's where I think, and this was just, it started right at about the time as DEI.
Yeah.
And look what happened. No one, if you go back and look at annual reports of the Fortune 500, you can't find that phrase anymore.
Yeah.
No one's talking about it anymore. And the question is this where we want this to end up? Are you willing to lay on the nomenclature and ultimately lose the battle?
So you're saving it.
Literally trying our best to save it.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, and I wish that could come across to people, is this entire initiative is about, we can see the trend lines, not just of corporations, but amongst employee groups. We see that this thing is quickly falling out of favor.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is save the work. I'm not here to save DE&I or DEIAB or DE. I don't care about the letters.
Right.
We're trying to say the work. And the work is about diverse workforces so that everyone has the opportunity to enjoy work, the dignity of work, and to make sure that when they're doing it, that they feel included. If we achieve that, then HR has nailed it. Business has won, employees have won, and we'll get the I, the E, the A, the B. All of that will be included in the process because that's the only way you achieve an inclusive workforce. But it's about the work, not the acronym.
You seem so convicted.
Yes.
I'm wondering what it's been like emotionally I know that you were prepared for some pushback,
yes.
But how has it been to be the face of anti-equity?
Especially as a Black man, right?
Right. I mean, that's the next question.
Let's talk about it, right?
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So, I would say sometimes, and I really have gotten comfortable with this, sometimes you have to be willing to take the hit for the progress, right? So I know where this is going. I've had to draw on, over the last 10 days, a lot of the works of, for example, Martin Luther King. At the time that Martin Luther King was assassinated, he was not particularly popular. In fact, he was very unpopular even in the African-American community because there was a debate about, do you fight force? Do you meet force with force? And he said, let's take a peaceful approach. And there were a significant number of people in my community who said, it's a really bad idea to let people put dogs on you and water hoses on you and for you to remain peaceful. Right. It was not popular at the time. Fast forward, he's got a place on the National Mall. Fast forward, our community is far better off than I think we would have been if we had met force with force because we were in the minority, right? So I draw on examples like that to say, this is a long game. We're 30 years into the DE&I work, and it's not exactly working. And that's not to take anything away from people who've poured their lives into this. But if we really, really were honest about what our goal was, if you looked back 30 years ago and say, where would you think you'd be in 2024? We don't think we'd be here. So that gives me motivation to say it's painful to hear people not disagree, because I expected disagreement. So I should break that down. Disagreement isn't the problem. The problem is the incivility, the vitriol, the assuming that you come at this from a bad place, given my personal body of work. As I said, obviously I'm an African-American, but more importantly, I left my very, very successful corporate career to go run the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, an organization that's committed to supporting the country's historically Black colleges and universities. I did for 7.5 years, raised over $100 million. And guess what? I didn't attend an HBCU. So this wasn't about some commitment giving back to a group of schools who helped me. That wasn't it. I knew how important that was. And there were several times throughout that journey that people challenged and said, I'm not sure that I know where you're coming from, but I've never been met with this kind of vitriol, which means people are very passionate about it. And I'm actually okay. So anyone watching, listening, I'm not mad at you. I get it. You feel strongly enough about it to actually get yourself upset about it and to say mean things. I'm disappointed, but I'm not upset about it because I think, give us 2 or 3 years, they're going to look back and say, gosh, that was a really good idea. That was a really good idea. It was painful at the time. I didn't get it, but that's wonderful about sort of strategy, right? In the beginning, no one knows what you're talking about. Next stage is people think you're nuts. And then there's a point that will come when everyone will say, oh yeah, that makes sense. We'll get there.
I applaud the bravery that it takes to take a bold step forward into a new reality. It's about adaptability and being as effective as possible. That's I'm glad you caught that nuance. I don't know. The reality is our data tells us human beings, frankly, don't embrace difference just by nature. I mean, we're, anthropologically, we work in clans, we're tribal. Right? So anything from the outside gives us angst and pause. So I get it.
But this idea that it has to be perfect, that we have to have the perfect answer and we have to have it right away, that's not the way progress is made in society. Society is incremental progress. And it starts with someone having a bold purpose, which is something we talk about at SHRM a lot, a point of view informed by data, and then writing it out a little bit. Tomorrow, I didn't expect, to answer your question, everyone to say, oh, that's great, SHRM is doing it. I knew there'd be naysayers. Again, was surprised at the level of incivility, but let's talk about incivility in that context. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, because we have gotten to a point as a society where it's not enough to disagree with you. I've actually got to dislike you. You have to be wrong and I have to be right. And it's not enough for you to just be wrong, you're bad. And this goes on. We're in a bad place. And so we at SHRM have started the 1 million civil conversations. It should have been 10 million or 100 million, right? Because it's more than just telling people to be civil. We've got to show them how to be civil. So to tell you very honestly, what bothered me more through these last 10 days was not that people disagreed. It was, and to be fair, it's a small number. So we focus on the small number, but the things that they would say online about me, about SHRM, about my family. I mean, it was really personal.
Yeah.
Why can't we just disagree better?
Yeah.
Like, right? How about that? Just you disagree. I'm not asking you to change your mind. And I'm not at this point ready to change our minds because we've used the data to make this decision. But the notion that we have to hold each other in contempt when we don't agree is a problem. And as I've said to one of the people who spoke to me in some really negative terms, I said, listen, you've got to look at the man or the woman in the mirror, right? And ask yourself, what kind of behavior are you modeling?
Right.
Right.
And there are also people who are speaking up in a civil way.
A ton of them.
Right. And I'm listening to them. I see their perspectives.
Yes.
And I understand. My reaction was, what a strategic move.
That's right.
What a great way to advance this mission that speaks to all parties.
Yes.
To the people who are responding in a civil way,
yes,
but who disagree.
Yes.
What would you say to them?
Just give us a little time.
Give us a little time.
Give us a little time. You're going to see this play out. You're going to see SHRM be a leader, SHRM and the HR profession be a leader in this work. And, my big dream is 5-10 years from now, literally people say, I got it.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest sort of compliment to me. And I've had similar situations happen in my life before where, there were naysayers, professional life, that is. We go down a path of saying, just stick with me. I'll give you one. I don't know if you're interested, but I was at Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and we decided to take a significant gift, 8-figure gift from Charles Koch. And at that time, he was being vilified. I mean, you couldn't say the Koch brothers and not receive. And so we accepted a donation from him to do really good work, to increase first of all, the conversation, dialogue, but also to increase diversity in workforces, to create opportunities for HBCU graduates to get jobs with companies that had never, ever recruited from them before.
Why did he give you that donation?
I pitched it to him. I said, this is good for America. This isn't just good for Black America. This is good for America. And he bought in and he did it. And guess what? There was a chorus of people. I can't believe you would take money from him. He's this, he's anti-environment, he's fossil fuel. I mean, there were no shortage of people who just thought this was the absolute worst thing. And I would say to them, very similar to right now, guys, remember the goal was to educate more African-American students. Remember that point, right? And a lot of those kids are dropping out because they don't have the financial resources to finish school. And he's giving us the financial resources to help them finish school. Remember that? You've lost sight of the goal. Fast forward, I just promise you, it was now a week ago, one of the graduates of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund program came to see me. He's working at an NIH lab in Washington, D.C. He has his PhD. He's doing lung cancer research. And he shared with me, he said, I was only able to complete this degree because of that donation that you secured.
I just got goosebumps.
I did too. I'm not exaggerating. And it was, out of the blue, this literally happened last week. So just
right on time for you to get remotivated.
A new battle, right?
So you're used to being the face of...
and taking these things on. But if you know where this could land, I'll get And SHRM will be recognized for its, frankly, what people then say was, earth-shattering or, brand new. It was pioneering efforts. So that's what I'd say to the people who are respectful and civil. Give us time to play this out. Something else I said, though, was we could be wrong. And you have to have the ability to have enough humility to say, the data tells us this. We're going to go down this path informed by this data. And if we're wrong, we're going to pivot again.
And you know how you're going to find out if you're wrong? People trying it. That's
right. Right now we can only speculate that the IND focus won't work. I'd like to think that everyone hopes it works. Like, you have to be really careful with people who say, well, I hope it doesn't work.
Right.
Well, what?
Why?
Why would you not want it to work? You just want to be right then. So this goes back to that fundamental problem of, I want to be right. I don't care if right. I'm like, okay, well then fine. You're right. So that's the other thing. I think one other point that I really wanted to make in this conversation is continue using DE&I if that's the term you want to use. Like, this isn't SHRM saying you have to do anything. We're saying what we're going to do. Our thesis, our belief is that the best way to get the change that we want and to see progress is to focus on the IND. It'll be really interesting for others to do it a different way. And we're going to know over time who is right.
And you're going to be doing research. So what's next?
Tons of data. So Dr. Alonso, our Chief Data and Insights Officer, has been charged with literally, and we've been studying this since 2018, by the way. We didn't just wake up and decide to do this. I'm sure you've heard. But we've been studying it, and we're going to continue. Just think of it as some big longitudinal study to see over time, are we able to influence people's hearts and their minds? Because that's what this is really about.
Yes.
And if we can get workers to buy into, as you talk about, the culture, if it begins to literally become less a program and more just a way that we operate.
The way people think and act.
The way people think and act. I was good. You got me.
To get results.
To get results, then we'll be right. But we could be wrong. And that's where I can really say we are not so full of ourselves to believe that we've got this all figured out. But we think we have a really good, we're going to take a big shot at this. But I'm hopeful that, I know this too shall pass. Like I said, I've seen in my career people tackle it and say, I know this too shall pass. And I'm hoping that, on the back end of this, and I hope it takes less than 3 years. We're going to be collecting the data, talking to employees every month as we do every quarter, gathering the data to see, and we'll be able to see if the sentiments have changed and if people are more accepting of this work and if corporations are more diverse and if they're reporting better engagement, less turnover, like the business results. If we can do that, it'll be great for people, great for business, people in profit, as you say, and things will be beautiful. That's our dream. And I hope it doesn't turn to a nightmare, but right now feels like it. But it's all good. It's all good.
Well, thank you for taking the shots.
Yes.
And for being the face of bold change.
Thank you.
In the interest of results and transformation. I mean, this is adaptability in action, folks.
Yeah, but human beings don't like that. You know that. They talk about change, but change is more than a word, right?
Yes, and change is more than from A to B. It used to be A to B. Now it's A to B to C to D to A to B to C
and back
to E, and then to Z, and then to 3 and 4.
That's right. I mean, that's it. You can't make it right? Then you put numbers in there.
Yeah,
on top
and
of
then
everything.
yellow.
No, totally
I have one last question, which is my favorite question.
Uh-oh.
What is something that you don't get asked about very often in these types of interviews that you do that you wish you were asked more often?
Are you ever afraid? Are you ever afraid? I get the opportunity to talk with CEOs a lot, and they all will tell you, we're human beings like anyone else.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, you could be fired. If you're wrong on these sorts of big social issues, you could have backlash in a way. I mean, I think about Budweiser and the decision that CEO made in the name of actually, I believe, trying to do the right thing, which is to make their brand more inclusive. Your heart can be right, your intentions can be right, but the business could be severely impacted when you do it. So every one of these decisions, you are constantly balancing, at the end of the day, might this be the one risk too many? Back, I grew up, there was this guy called Evel Knievel, right? And I'm like, David, you remember that?
Yeah.
And so Evel Knievel would get on his motorcycle and he'd jump over 5 cars, and then he'd add another one and 6 cars. There's one time when you put one card too many and you end up dead or very, very broken up. And so that's one of the questions I don't get. Like, how do you decide as a leader? First of all, are you fearful when you make these decisions? The safe approach is to take the least controversial, just live it out, work another 10 years, retire, like all is good.
Yeah.
And so that's the question is, are you actually afraid? And I will tell you, Jessica, there are times when you get heart palpitations. You're like, uh-oh, suppose I'm wrong. What if I damage my company's SHRM's reputation and its brand in a profound way? Again, I constantly reflect back on Budweiser. It was the number one, producer of beer product in America forever. And now it's number 3. It didn't just drop 1. It didn't just drop 2. It dropped to number 3.
Yeah.
And that CEO took a bold move and has to live with it.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the question is, as a CEO, are you ever afraid? I think about sports coaches when you decide, do I play for the tie or do I play for the win?
Yeah.
Do I take a 3-point shot in the basketball game to win, or do I just tie, live to see another day so that we get some overtime play? You have to make those decisions when you make these sorts of big issues. So that's what people don't ask me. Are you afraid of it?
Yeah. And are you?
There's a reason I don't ask because I don't want to answer. Yes. But I got to tell you, yes, not because I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid because there are a lot of people counting on us to get this right. And so if we're wrong and this work goes further backwards, then the responsibility of that is overwhelming. It really is, because we can't keep doing this. There is a point where DE&I could die. Like, there will be a point where business literally says, I'm over it. We couldn't figure it out, so we're done with it.
Yeah.
And so our hope is that this is right, because if not, this could be that 7th car in Evel Knievel's Jump that was one too many. And again, I'm not worried about my career. I've been fortunately and blessed. I'm not going to miss any meals for the rest of my life for sure. But, and probably could stand doing a 1 or 2 anyway. But I do worry that if we don't get this right, that my kid, who's 14 now, is going to be having this conversation 30 years from now. My grandkids could be having this conversation 30 years. Women should be in the workplace still not being paid equitably, still not being treated to equal opportunity for promotions and the like, people with disabilities, African Americans. Like, this could all be bad. And so that's what I'm afraid of, but it's not having a job, guys. It's not that serious. You can't sit in these jobs and be worried about your job.
Right. Well, sitting here across from you in this room, my heart feels that your heart is committed to this.
Because it is.
And that you are coming from the right place, and you're doing it in the most strategic and forward-thinking way possible, and that you want to bring the world along for the ride, for the better.
Yes.
So thank you for taking that risk and living with that fear.
Well, thank you for help us tell this story, because it's a really important story for people to understand. And I hope 5 years from now, hopefully sooner, but no later than 5 years from now, we're sitting here saying, you remember when we were sitting down talking about it, and now look at where we are. That's my passion. It's not about being right.
Yeah.
It's about doing the right thing and the right thing yielding great business results and great people results.
So I'll send you a calendar invite for 5 years from today.
I love it.
I'll see you here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.